Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and today is, I believe it's Wednesday. Today is July 31st, the last day of the month. And what a doozy! This is the kind of stuff you'll see on a FOMC day, and it was really slow up until the news came out, and then it just went crazy. And in the big picture, it just turned out to be about a 10-point trading range. And if you bought these lows, you were good, and if you sold these highs, you were good. Um, I actually bought this last one, but I'll explain that when we get to it. And then I was done. And you could have sold any of these moves off the trend line coming down. You can see that. And let me, if you don't have your trend line in there, you don't know what's going on there. But if you draw your trend line, then it's pretty obvious as to exactly what's going on down through there. So you got to use your trend lines, and make sure you use those trend lines. And this might have been a little bit lower. I think it was more like right there. But use those trend lines, because that would have put you in every one of those trades. And once you broke, it looked like we had a channel going up here, then we fell to the next level, and then guess what? We fell to the next level. Then we went up, and then we fell back down through another level. And if you measure these are all equal distance. And so that would have put you, given you the right place to look for all of these entries. So let's go back here and start from the beginning. And there's a lot of a lot of entries today. And there were really more. There's some others in there you might have considered taking. But I drew the most easy to spot ones, the ones that were most obvious. And we'll go from there. But it started off early. I got in here around 7 o'clock or so. This was the first trade I saw. It was just a test of this low here, and you see we broke one tick lower and turned up. And what I did was, when this broke higher, I used a limit order, dropped it in a tick or two because it's a big bar. It did come back. You could have gotten filled several ticks back into that bar. I think I got back 2 ticks, and then off we go. And if you did, even if you used a stop, you were okay here, but you're taking a bigger chance on your safety stop. But if you entered on a stop here with a buy stop, you still were okay, other than you didn't get any runners out of this. But if you entered with a limit order and backed up a tick or two, you were able to ride this all the way back to the top, and that's where I exited when that bar formed right there. You got another chance to enter here. You got this new low, first entry short, second entry short. It trapped everybody. You can see that little break lower, turned up, and look how you can tell it trapped everybody, and that's what ran it up to the new high. So chance to enter here or add on. If you wanted to add on, you could add on there. There really was a second entry long here. But I was a little hesitant to take it, and I meant to really mark this in green, or you really could have marked it in blue. I'm trying to decide if I want to mark that. I'm actually going to change that to blue, just because I missed it. I did miss this trade, and I'll explain to you here. Let's find the blue. And that's why it wasn't marked, because I missed it. I didn't take this trade. But it's just a two-legged pullback to the EMA. It's a second entry long, and it's one of those where you could use a limit order. Let me just make sure, if you entered on a stop, I think it still worked. 86.50, yep, and then you see it got just enough, and then we went into this chop, and then you get a failed second entry long. So I like that one, but this is one where you had to use a limit order. And the reason I like the short better than the long is because at this point it looked like it was going to be a trading range. But we came down here, we made a double bottom, we reversed out of there. I didn't like going long there. You actually could have. So I really could have made that one in green. But by this time, look at all that overlap in there. And I just decided, hey, it's time to stay out of this. But But you could have considered this was a bounce off of this line, because this line could have been a little bit higher right here maybe. But I was using those closes down through there. And actually I was using that bar right there because we found support. And that's real close to meeting the line. It didn't quite meet it, but when we failed to go lower here, that's a second entry long, and I felt like I didn't know we were going to do this. I felt like we were probably going to break out above this and then turn back down. But we went on higher, so at that point I'm thinking, yeah, this channel, there's some validity to this channel I got here, and I got that line down here I got the angle off of these two moves right here. I originally had it a little bit higher, I think, and it still fits right there, but I got that angle from there and pulled it down here, and it didn't really bounce prices. It wasn't really that important down here, but it was important up here, and you can see we turned prices down up here. And but we'll get to that in a minute. But I like this long right here. It's a little second entry long, and I'm thinking we're going to make a new high, and boy, it was off to the races here. And you really wouldn't have got in this one without a stop. You might have got a limit order filled right there, but I doubt it, because it gapped from one to the next, and it backed up just a few minutes. So if you weren't quick, you didn't have much time, and then it was gone. And then guess what? There's a failed second entry short there. This is a new low. First entry short, you're moving up second entry short. It quickly fails. You go long right there, easy scalp. We really had a failed second entry short right here, but you had to be careful here, because look at all that overlap. After that huge move up, we got the little break, attempt to go higher, and we never could make a new high, and then we started trading down. And then I really thought there might be a chance here. I didn't like the setup. Even if you entered here, once you saw those dojis, you got to think about exiting. It even came back and gave you another chance to get out, and you got to take that. But you should have drawn this line, and you can see that it was just back off down. And if you were looking at the trading range, I think I originally had the highs right there, and I'm pretty sure I never measured it, but it's close enough just to look eyeballing it that this is pretty much a measured move. And you can see that there's the first one, and then there's the second one, and that's basically it to a tick almost. So that's another clue that you wanted to exit up here and be real careful. So I didn't like anything in there. You might have gone short right there, but I just didn't like it because there's too much chance it'll snap back, make a new high before going lower. So I didn't mark anything in there. If you went short off either one of these, they would have worked as long as you kept your stop where you're supposed to, above the signal bar. So if you took either one of those, it's a little aggressive, too aggressive for me at that point after that move up. But another thing to look at is this is your first move up and then your little correction, so you're looking for a measured move too, and you can see we kind of basically had that measured move. So that was another clue. You can get there usually more than one way to find your target. We went a few ticks higher than that, but that was a clue that we might go down. And then we got a failed second entry long right there. If you got trapped there, you got to exit. If you didn't go long there, you got to go short. There's plenty of room back down here. It's a retest of the EMA. And before I move on to this next trade, I'm going to talk about this real quick. Somebody asked me today about buying this bounce here, but notice what happened. Notice how prices pulled back and they went through the EMA and came back up and tested it. Usually on a good EMA bounce, you're not going to get through that EMA. You're going to bounce right off of it, kind of like right here. You tick through a tick or two, but nothing closed under it. Let's find another one. Notice how once prices, even here, we got a little bit of a bounce before we went lower. There's really not a good example today, but here really we do here. Notice how once we got back above, we're finding support each time we kind of pull back to that EMA. That's a little bit. Here's one coming down. None of these are real good examples. But I guess what I'm trying to say is if prices are really rallying up like this and suddenly you come back and you go through the EMA, that's not a good sign for a long. I'd be leery of that. And that's what talked me out of that trade right there of trying to get long. And because generally prices should have bounced here and gone higher, not get through there. And that just because you get through doesn't mean you can't go higher, but generally on a strong trend, you're barely even going to touch the EMA, and a lot of times, like here, you're not even going to get back to it very often. By the time you got back to it here, we'd already had a trend line breaking a new high. So you really should have been really careful about going long right there, because your trend line rules have shown you that move's probably over. And going up here, that was another clue going up. We had this trend channel, we had a little break, and we tried to make a new high, but we couldn't. And they trapped everybody is basically what they did, and drove it all the way back down. And the overnight close was right in here, and that's what, so they were trying to bring prices back to test that, to fill that gap. And then we rallied off of that. And then the news came out and everything went crazy, but it was a really good move. And but let's finish talking about them. There was a chance to go short right here, and and it is a second entry short, but I didn't like it because I was afraid this was a trend channel. We didn't have a break yet. So we eventually got the break and came back and made the new high. So even those rules still held. And we found, and you also use that channel to find your measured moves. So if you saw that trade, I'm gonna go ahead and I guess I should probably mark that one in green too. But I didn't take it. I just didn't really like it. It just, for some reason, I felt like it was worth waiting. And so I waited here, and then you get like a little breakout pullback, but a failed second entry long, a real bearish bar. I dropped a limit order in a tick in, and it didn't like it was going to come up, so I moved it down and just got filled where my stop would have got filled. And it took it a little bit of time, but it worked on down, and it moved on down pretty quickly, really, and we overshot the low side. So any runners were good here. And then, and then by this time, it's so close to the news coming out, you can see nobody wanted to do anything. And then right there, your news comes out and it goes haywire. But guess what? You've got this line coming up through here. You got a failed second entry short that bounced off of it twice. I like that, and things were moving quick, so it didn't take but a second to scalp out of that. And once you went to this overlap with that little failed break higher, notice you went up and a little bit higher, and then you turn down. You don't know that it's, the odds are it's coming back, because generally you take news moves back fairly quickly. Not always that quickly, but it took it back pretty quickly. But I did go ahead and mark this one in green because it was news time, and a lot of times it's better just to stay out until news. But I liked it because of the trap. I took it. It was an easy move. I got a little bit extra out of the runners. And then it turns and comes right back down and it bounces. I was tempting to go long on this first entry, but because it was a news item, this is not uncommon for it to run both ways. But let me show you something, because I know somebody else got fooled here. There's one leg up, pull back, and a second leg. That's a two-legged correction after a down move. And so you're probably going to get two legs in this direction. And this is just a little two-legged correction here. So if you didn't go long right here, you don't want to really go long above that bar, unless you use a limit order. And if you did that, it would have come back, and you probably would have had enough to get out. But it was better to wait for a second entry. But guess what? By the time the second entry came, you had all this overlap, and that's just not a good setup. And then it ticked higher, trapped everybody, and turned down. And so, now you're looking for a leg like this down. We got a whole lot more than that. We actually went straight down to the other side. And so nice place to enter short. But again, it's right at the news, so it's a little bit aggressive. I think it's almost better, especially if you're not real experienced reading the price action. You're better off just to wait till this thing settles down. And it really didn't, and then it comes, but by this time you're okay. This is more of a normal market, but it's a good trend going up. right off the trend line, right off the trend line, your first break. So okay there, it's a little two-legged pullback, chance to ride to the high, easy trades, and then I was done for the day. But I talked about these trades coming down. There were several opportunities. Second entry short here, second entry short here, two-legged pullback, breakout pullback short off the trend line right here. Failed break higher here. Notice these little highs across here. We broke higher. It's just a turn down off the trend line again, and you know, you should have been thinking, hey, another measured move down. But of course we got even a little bit more than that, and then it bounced back up and got back inside that little channel there. And that was what I saw for today. But in the end scheme of things, it's just a big trading range, and you can see that. But just be careful around the FOMC news, especially. It can be crazy. So, but that's pretty much it for today. I'm going to wrap it up. I got to be out. It's almost 4 o'clock now that I'm getting this done. I'm a little late getting the video done today because I hung around here and watched some of this and did some other things as well. But I hope you had a good trading day. I hope it was a good month for you. If it felt a little crazy today, it was. But, you know, I love this kind of movement. When you start to see these little channels, these are, especially when you're, you know, and that's one other thing I'm going to hit on, then I'm going to end this video. But just remember that there are trends within ranges and there are ranges within trends. So you can switch, you know, you're not always, just because today's a range day, you're not necessarily following, you're only looking for the range rules when you get to the highs and lows, and in between, if there's a trend, you got to use trend rules. So I think a lot of people get confused about that. I had some questions. How do you know, when do you determine what kind of day it is? Well, you know, immediately when I came in this morning, I was trading range rules for the most part, and I didn't switch to a trend till here. And but that's because of all the things we talked about. This is literally a little breakout pullback long as well. Notice this high is higher. We broke above that little double top. Couldn't go any lower. That's not a good sign. It's a good sign that it's probably going higher. You don't know this is going to do all this, but you figure you're going to get a scalp at the least, and it ends up being a huge move. And you can make several points off runners there. So don't get confused. Just because you're trading this as a trend all the way down. Look what happened here. You had to start thinking about a trading range right there. And then next thing you know, you're back to the down. And this is a break of your trend channel, and there's the retest. It was as good as it gets, and then you're moving up. You get your break, your retest, and then you're moving down. You get your break, and it tried to retest it twice. It couldn't go any lower. Strong support. That's a good sign it's going higher, and there it goes. And so, yeah, don't get hung up on, you got to just take the whole picture into, you got to go with what prices are doing now. What prices are doing right now are more important than anything. But then you got to determine, is there a downtrend? Has there been a trend line break? So when there's a range this big, you got to draw your short-term trend lines. You just got to do it. There's no other way that it's going to keep you on the right side, in my opinion, if you don't. And that might have kept you out of this long. It almost kept me out of it, but the market was moving so fast, I felt like we would at least come back and test this again before we turned down, but it went quite a bit higher. And that's what generally happens when the market's emotional like that, because of whatever the news is coming out. And so just keep that in mind. You're not locked into anything, and the market changes as the day goes on. This is definitely a range from the lows and highs were here, and then this made a much tighter range. And a lot of times it's better just to stay out of that. If you're not sure, stay out. But really, you could have bought the lows here or sold the highs as long as you got in close enough to the highs or lows and done fine. And that's what you do when it's a range. Same thing here. If you just sold the highs or bought the lows, you could have squeezed out whatever's in there every time. That one's too tight. I'd stay away from that one. But anyway, this is I'm pretty much going to wrap it up. I hope that makes sense to you. I had a little interruption there, and I don't even remember where we ended, but I need to wrap this up. I'm going to get out of here today. I'm a little late. So we'll wrap it up. We'll start a new month tomorrow. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.